also. Yeah.
And next panel we have like really interesting, and the reason because we are going to talk about the future, and future is always bright as we know, but sometimes it's not. So this is Tarmo's job today to understand from the panelist. So we would like to invite the moderator Tarmo Virki, um, editor Äripäev, and then we have Ken from Toku, Mari from Icebreaker. Please do come, Mari. You're offline here. And Vikram from DAOLens, and Stenver from Solid World DAO, which is not DAO anymore, just to clarify.
And just a quick notice, yeah, that 2 people on stage only, but it doesn't mean that online people are not with us. They are.
It's more fun when only 2 of us are on stage, and we are not offline here. We are analog.
Yes.
Yeah.
It will go
Okay.
online everywhere in the
Analog,
world.
and please keep an eye on here as well, because you will see people
We'll see
here.
the others from there. Okay, good
Okay,
stuff.
good luck.
Good. I think we'll sit, right? And maybe start off with that small... Oh, this is nice. Our mission with the last panel is to wrap up the day with a look into the future. So the smallest of the challenges. A lot of legal talk has been here. A lot of talk that DAOs will never happen, or if they will happen in some distant future. I think Magnus just said that, you know, if something happens, it's not going to be anytime soon. And you know, when Dmitry asked that, you know, how much DAOs actually needed, estimates were, you know, nobody thought that they are definitely needed. Let's do a small introduction round to start off with. Mari, as a, you know, the only real world person on the panel and the only female on the panel, please start.
Thank you. Mari from Icebreaker. We are 140 million pre-seed fund from Finland, investing in Nordics and Baltics. Over 100 portfolio companies, some crypto, blockchain, metaverse even, not DAOs yet. Let's see what's going to happen. My background is in marketing and in startups. I have also been in crypto over 10 years, so saw the ICO and things happening previously.
Let's then change to the, you know, online world fully. The digital guests we have on this panel, 3 gentlemen there. Let's start off with the most distant visitors. Kenneth, say a few words about what you're doing with Toku.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. Thank you for moderating. I'm Ken. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Toku. What we realize is that tokens have, you know, maybe they have different designs, maybe they're used for DeFi, maybe they're used for staking, but actually all, if not all, basically all these tokens are used in some form of compensating or aligning incentives for, you know, a DAO or, you know, all the way to a traditional corporation. And Toku helps ensure that all of that compensation happens legally and compliantly.
Vikram, you talked a little bit in the morning, but for the guests who, or the listeners and the viewers here who might have missed your speech in the morning, what you guys work on?
Hey everyone, thank you for having me, and thanks Stenver. Folks, so I am Vikram. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DAOLens, and background-wise, I am all about product design growth. Previously, I was working with Merkle Science, which is into blockchain compliance, basically understanding fraud whenever there is a suspicious activity and sort of stopping that transaction. Today, DAOLens is working with over 100 plus Web3 communities in general. Some of them may not really be exactly DAOs. That is why we use that term to sort of handle end-to-end operations. So if you're working in one DAO, you have to jump between 10 tools. If you're working for 2 DAOs, you're jumping between 20 plus instances of tool, and we make sure that you don't really have to go out. And on top, we are playing a lot with everything that's happening lately in the world of AI. So everything is getting gradually powered by AI. It's super modular, meaning DAOLens could look like a university for somebody, could look like a discussion forum for somebody, and so on.
Thanks, Vikram. How to say it beautifully in English, let's put the cat on the table. Stenver, I understand that you didn't want to show up today here in real life, but tell us why Solid World is not DAO anymore.
Should I start with that or should I start with my introduction?
It should be part of the same thing.
Really? Yeah, so I'm currently in New York. So actually I'm flying to Estonia tonight. So you just did the conference too early. I asked you to move it a few days forward, but you disagreed to do it just because of me.
And that's why you dropped the DAO?
Exactly. But for those that don't know me, I've been in venture-backed tech businesses for a decade. I was early on in Glia, which is a New York-based enterprise SaaS business working with Fortune 500 companies. I was developer lead over there, and it's now a unicorn in New York. I took it from seed to around Series B. I was also in Estonian Founders Society 2 years in a row in the management board with Stenver, who's the GP of DAOs plus 10 fund. They're also investors in Solid World. I was also in founder of Agronom, which is a leading climate tech company in Central Eastern Europe. We turned 2.4 million acres of farmers into carbon farmers. And I took it from founding to Series B. And right now I'm working on Solid World, which is basically solving the issue that it's incredibly difficult for big financial institutions to deploy capital into the carbon credit space. Like I spoke with JP Morgan a couple of weeks ago. They told me they want to deploy $10 trillion into green finance with the consortium of banks. They'd like carbon to be part of that, but it's so hard for them to assess the risks in carbon markets, voluntary carbon markets specifically, because it's so unstructured. It's very OTC, it's very transparent and very untransparent and pen and paper based. So we're solving that issue. But to answer your second question, we started as a DAO, a private DAO, not a public one. Internally, we've always been structured like a company. And I think there's a lot of other DAOs over there as well. I don't know if today there was lots of talks about private DAOs. But the fact that we're working so much with institutions and doing like everything in a regulatory compliant way, at one point we realized that being a DAO at this stage is just swimming too much upstream. When I go and talk with JP Morgan, and maybe you guys saw the MasterCard Lighthouse partnership that came out, then I don't want their first question to be, what is a DAO? And then we spend the next 30 minutes talking about DAOs. I want to talk about what problems and solutions I'm solving. So basically, that was the biggest thing for us. And like the last panel said, there's a lot of lack of regulatory clarity at this stage. And since we were a private DAO, it's pretty straightforward for us to restructure into a company. We did have corporate entities before, but then we just became fully equity-based, normal company essentially. And
so it's great that you're a normal company now. We have probably
that's one important point. I am truly a big believer of token-based governance, and in the long run, I want to go back to this, and we made it very clear for all our shareholders as well.
It's great to know, but when is the long run? I'm of course making a mistake of giving the only Estonian who likes to speak word, but Stenver, when is the long run? When will you be DAO again? What's your current estimate?
Whenever there's regulatory clarity, whenever that it's not a big question anymore that what is a DAO, and where banks and everybody accept working with DAOs. So I'm not going to give a date to that. Since we're more like Web 2.5 company, not Web 3, we're tokenizing real world assets. I don't think we should be at the forefront of driving this change. It's easier to do for companies which are fully digitally native.
Mari, you're looking at this discussion as from the investor perspective, who's thinking about possibly investing in DAOs, but you can probably understand Stenver's dilemma, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, we can see the same thing, that there's a lot of this like innovation in the blockchain and token ecosystem. But I'm quite positive because I've been in crypto quite a long time, and honestly, like I experienced the ICO boom quite closely, what the previous keynote mentioned, and I never imagined that the market will recover from that so fast. Like I would have expected like 5 years, 6 years, and it was more like 2 years that it started to recover, and banks and governments got interested about it. And when you see as a bank or government the opportunity of money, like you actually realize that there's a lot of money and a lot of like new business there, like they will find a way. So I'm quite positive from the like regarding to DAOs as well, that when it becomes a thing that all the regulatory like parties actually realize that there is a big opportunity there, they will move eventually, and it can be very fast.
From the audience and from the speakers today, we can understand that at least the legal sector has understood that there is money here in this sector, right?
Definitely.
Gentlemen online, Ken and Vikram, do you have any input on this discussion? They seem quiet. Okay, looking forward, one of the key comments which came out from the discussion was compliance, that the compliance need to be sorted out. We have a few compliance gentlemen there online. Ken, Vikram has also been working on the compliance side. Is there kind of any chance we can actually fix it anytime soon? Are we talking about something which happened already, and regulators have their own problems to deal with, and we are here just imagining about the future technology which could change the world?
No, yeah, I think compliance is in fact largely a solvable problem, and there is enough proof point for that. It's just that it's very late that we have started realizing that there needs to be regulations, because as much as there is power in keeping things anonymous and decentralized and letting the collective wisdom of a group of people drive things forward, there are certain aspects where things can go out of hand, and the technology is still changing so fast. What I mean by that is, if let's say you go and profile 100 criminals, saying that, okay, anytime a token ends up interacting with these wallets, flag that transaction. Criminals also understand that. And the very next day, they're going to do something else on that end. They're going to probably create their new wallets, which is why you had the introduction of something in the form of a travel rule, which has been like being talked about a lot now lately. And the idea is very simple. Anyone who's creating a wallet, they need to share their KYC details with the authorities as and when asked. Now, of course, not every country in the world complies with it, and we go into the standard discussion of, okay, we're going to blacklist a particular exchange and whatsoever. But that's like just one aspect. There are also developments being made from the technical end saying that, okay, if Vikram is having 10 Bitcoin and Vikram breaks it down into, let's say, 0.1 each, right? Like, so I basically divide 10 Bitcoins into 100 smaller chunks. That's a fishy behavior on my end. And can you like really use data and algorithmic patterns to understand that, okay, flag this because it looks like I'm trying to do something sad here, right? Like, or something which may not really be correct. So there is a complete possibility. It's just that as of now, there are so many new things coming in. Like, for example, if you just start considering what happens with ZK Sync, there's a whole new world which is unexplored. People are now thinking about, okay, hey, what ends up happening if you have a private DAO? What sort of a privacy are we talking about? Can we still verify the credentials? Does that mean that you would have to submit your credentials to an exchange, but that credential will not really become public, and so on? That it's going to be the game of like catching up to the technology for a while. And I think we'll just have to adapt to it. Like, while I was working with some of the most reputed clients who were trying to deal with compliance in their own way, the most common narrative back then was that if the Fed or if the FBI or somebody of their equivalent in their respective jurisdiction is using a tool, they don't want to be more wrong, which means you also use exactly the same tool. And then you say that, hey, whatever is the best possible offering we are trying to do. Now, if something the technology can't catch, of course, we learn and adapt from there. So that's just my take on it. And on the previous point, because I was hoping I would say something on that, like as much as I agree on the compliance bit, I also think that human coordination is like a massively unsolved problem in DAO space. We ourselves started positioning DAOLens as a DAO, and then we decided that we don't want to do DAOs. And it was not because we were not like really positioned in the form of a company or we didn't have a legal entity. That is still an undefined piece, but it was very obvious that you cannot have like a lot of people making decisions in early stages because there is like a lot of tangential ideas that keep coming in. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, the human factor is clearly also the one which was behind your decisions, Stenver, right?
Yeah, well, I'm a strong believer in that compliance is needed, but just good compliance. And I mean, regulatory frameworks, and good regulatory frameworks is what I wanted to say. You can really do bad regulatory frameworks, but these don't help. So we basically have 2 types of worlds over here. We have the on-chain world and we have the off-chain world. When it comes to on-chain world, then I don't think we need any government input over there. The smart contracts are stronger than any law. You can't cheat code. But when we go off the chain, then that's where, you know, we come back to our regular traditional world. And regulation has helped a lot in the past in bringing certainty to the industry, bringing investor trust, making sure capital flows faster, quicker, and more reliably. And focusing on regulating this part of the world is, I think, very much welcome, and we're happy to always give our input on what is good and what is bad, in our opinion.
Continuing on that on-chain side, on the digital world, Ken, what's your take on that? I mean, you're basically making tools, right, for this?
Well, I was just going to add to kind of the comment on can we do anything, you know, in terms of legal progress. I think, you know, my viewpoint and, you know, I think is being increasingly shared as I can't speak to, you know, Estonian regulators, but in the US, you know, you're starting to get a lot of these kind of actions from the SEC or the DOJ going after DAO members for the actions that they've taken. And I think what many people maybe could be doing is just go back into history. You know, it's like kind of, it's probably been done before in terms of how corporations formed and looking into why. And so for a DAO, you know, from a compliance standpoint, if you just, let's just say myself, Vikram and Stenver, we get together and say, hey, let's start a business, you know, and let's do, you know, let's launch a token. We are a part of a general partnership. You can call it a DAO, but the law, at least in the US, will say that is a general partnership. And so what that means is us 3 will be held liable for the actions of the partner, you know, whatever we decide to do. And, you know, to avoid that, typically, I think, you know, Estonia and most countries have their own version of a limited liability company. And so you want this structure in place, and so that, like, if something goes sideways, you can't be held personally, you know, kind of liable for whatever actions, you know, may or may not happen. And so, you know, just like one form of like existing legal infrastructure, you know, and then follow, you know, kind of like securities law, making sure that you don't like go promote your, you know, token if you're a DAO and you decide to launch one. I think that there's actually a lot of things that like currently exist that a lot of people can do, but, you know, when you're kind of in the Wild West and, you know, the early days of 2018 or 2019 and the ICO boom, it's like no one's really kind of paying attention or trying to follow those regulations. So I think that there is a lot of like 95% of, you know, kind of like existing laws are actually good and they work, but there is that 5% of, you know, making sure that like, you know, they can follow with the new technologies and follow, you know, help regulate what we have today is needed. But I think that the industry and most DAOs actually should just follow the first, you know, kind of like most laws that I think are good. Same thing on kind of from a labor standpoint. If you're working for a DAO, Estonia has very defined labor laws that go back, hundreds, if not 1,000 years. It's an old country, and so there's a lot, I think, just in that space that we can do, and we can just ignore all the technology, actually. So in terms of then, like, if you do that, then I think a lot more people will listen. But then, it's about how do you communicate this clearly and concisely, which I think, Stenver, you've run into these issues, it sounds like, and it's not as straightforward yet.
Stenver, you wanted to say something on this?
I didn't, but I can.
You always can. But please do.
We did have a proper legal body and everything like that behind. We work with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Preet Latt has been advising us since the beginning. He's done an excellent job. We basically, started it by asking who's the best Web3 lawyer in Estonia, and that's how we found him. And but ultimately, just having the letters DAO in the name was a point of too much friction. We felt that it just felt like it's not a battle that we want to win. We have another battle we're fighting, which is basically bringing carbon forwards on chain and making them liquid and structured and accessible for all these banks and stuff. So we wanted to focus on our energy where the impact will be the biggest, basically.
In the global perspective, much bigger fight. The looking into the future, the most beautiful challenge. But from the investor perspective, that's the only challenge, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What's your take on this discussion? In this panel and also previously, many people have been drawing parallels to the times before ICO boom. Will everybody in the DAO world be rich in a few years? Or?
Probably, yes. Like, in my opinion, it's just like one wave of adoption of these technologies, like making it more accessible in a way. But like what is a little bit missing from DAOs, like it was quite fascinating. I didn't realize that only 500,000 people are actively using DAOs nowadays. It's smaller number than I expected, but I live in this weird blockchain bubble, so it's probably that thing. But basically what is missing a little bit there is kind of the real world like value use cases that probably make the adoption faster if that was implemented, like a little bit what was mentioned there, that like don't focus too much on DAO or blockchain, on the technology itself, but only the value, like communicating the value and creating the value.
You are working on planning to launch a DAO yourself. Tell us a few words.
Yeah, that's been one plan. Like I'm just super like curious about these new technologies, and one thing that has been fascinating me all the time with crypto and everything is the accessibility and inclusion part, because, well, obviously I'm a woman in tech, and nowadays I'm taken seriously because of my position and certain things I have achieved during my career. But 15 years ago, I wasn't taken seriously at all. And that's in many cases the case. Like book is a little bit like judged by its cover. So I think this anonymity and some kind of like not your real identity can provide some kind of like new interesting challenge, opportunities for women and minorities globally. And that was exactly what I experienced when this ICO boom started. That obviously like majority of the value or basically the money created by these shitcoins mainly was flowing into pockets of young men, usually, that spent the money on Lambos and didn't deliver anything. But then in the other hand, they didn't really even promise to deliver anything. It was just usually just a landing page and something, but there wasn't any promise or kind of like contract that with this money we will do X. Like there wasn't that at all. So was it wrong then? I don't know. But basically,
we have lawyers in the room. I'm sure they are happy to give an input. Was it wrong or not? But sorry.
Yeah, Yeah, that has been the basically the aftermath of that in many cases that I looked into back then. But anyway, like then I started to wonder, like, okay, if random people have this opportunity right now to build a landing page, attract the money, so why would I don't know, a woman from Venezuela do this as well and then invest the money in their community? Like technically that's possible with these kind of systems. And then the DAO that I'm planning to do is basically like a related to this. I really strongly see this like these kind of technologies as an opportunity to empower women globally and offer them a way to basically funnel value to their community and usually the girls' education back there. I have this non-profit of training immigrant women to be employed in tech. And so far I've been able to train 107 individuals with employment rate of 94%. And I would like to provide them a way to provide value to companies. And usually when you first fix the first issue in their life, which is the integration in Finland, usually in this case, then they want to bring some like additional value for the community, be useful, find like other income sources to be basically wealthy instead of just like doing fine. And DAO would be like technically the perfect mechanism for that. Like corporation give a project to these women all over the world and they will fix it somehow, and then the value will be spread by like for the contribution. But then when you start to look into that from the regulatory perspective, it's actually very hard to put together, like in terms of how to pay salaries, who pays salaries, who takes care of taxes, employments, how the union is gonna, what union thinks, and so on. So kind of the that part it's still very complex, but technically it's super easy.
I wonder, has any of the Nordic trade unions come out with statements about DAO or crypto, what they think about it?
Yeah, well, before joining VC, I was head of growth of home cleaning company, and we did some union collaboration, and I'm looking forward to see something like that happening.
It's an interesting road, but on the compensation, I think Ken Online is the one to turn to and solve that challenge, right, Ken?
Yeah, come give us a shout whenever you're ready.
Good. More of these kind of solutions, please. Yeah. But going forward with DAOs, for you to actually execute on it, what would need to change?
Usually it's mindset thing. Like we had a discussion about Finnish politics. We're running to elections soon, and currently it's very interesting environment because all the individuals kind of like want the same things, like more jobs and more wealthy and maintain the Nordic welfare and so on, but they still want to disagree with all the other parties, and this is a little bit with these like new technologies, like they would fix so much, but then at the same time, like often these other parties, like for instance unions, just want to disagree, just to, I don't know, for some reason, and it's very time consuming to like if you open up the discussion and find the common language, so basically you are able to speak about the same thing and understand each other, you get the same page, but it will be very time consuming road, and it would be very beneficial to have some parties or basically players that basically take care of all that.
In now drawing parallels to the DAO world, I mean, everybody wants, at least probably in this room, I would guess, everybody wants to get it sorted and become commonplace. But there are some weird forces which are politics, unions. You mentioned a few others which might be the roadblocks on the way. Gentlemen, let's make a quick round around the world and see what you see as the main roadblocks and how could you tear them down, or how could we all together tear them down? It's eventually about the collaboration. Who wants to start? If I don't see any hands, let's start with you, Vikram.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a couple of things that sit right at the top of my priority list, or at least in my experience, what I think needs to be tackled the first. And that's the fact that DAOs still, like, while there are a zillion problems that exist in terms of the DAO having its own identity and like regulatory things and all the other stuff that we've been talking about since morning, we still need to like decouple how we behave, or like as a DAO, what we are really tangibly achieving. So I could like give a few examples. 1 year back, you could join a DAO, write a Twitter thread for a random community and make like $500 for just writing that, because that is what the bounties were like back then. And everything was going up. Bitcoin was going up, Ethereum was going up, maybe a little more than a year. Today, if you go in, you will see that because the prices are all plummeting, everything has gone down, the bounties have gone down, to the extent that DAOs have almost hit that spot where they're like, okay, it's a matter of survival for us. We simply want to sit the winter out, right? Like, which means the idea of a group of people coming together and solving stuff is now no longer even the primary focus area. They simply want to like restrict it. Most of the operations in some of the very established DAOs, like very, very, very established DAOs that were completely decentralized, have gone to that route where you are now simply going and saying that 85%, 90% of my day-to-day work will be taken care of by a centralized team, and I only depend on the community to take care of the remaining 10%. That's because you don't want to like not be in that state where you're not reliable enough, where the timelines are not being missed. And that's largely because human collaboration has its own issues. The only way out that I see, like, let's say if we have identified that, hey, guilds or sub-teams is probably an effective way of like grouping people together, maybe you need to add in more and more experimentation. And there are a few DAO models where, for example, if we all know that governance is a problem and that more and more people are not really actively voting, there are maybe 100 people who say that governance is a problem and one person who's really actively trying an experiment that is probably going to solve for it. And I think more of the second needs to happen, or more of the later needs to happen for us to get to that spot, which is like everybody has their own opinion on which DAO models are very successful. But one of the DAO models that I'm really, really, really happy with, at least in terms of what it's panning out to be, is the Nouns ecosystem, where while they make money, they ensure that a good amount of fund is being given out to different projects. Some of those projects are just for the sake of popularity. But a lot of these projects could actually end up becoming $100 million businesses tomorrow. Even if like 10 of them end up becoming, Nouns would be successful by a large, large, large margin. So my baseline is that you need to experiment a lot more. And then somebody over these experiments needs to start talking about revenue as well. Because as much as DAOs are trying to like create new economies, that's really not happening. None of the DAO tools, barring 2 or 3 today, are really even focused on revenue. Like I have it on record with at least 10 founders from DAOs who are like, oh, at this point in time, the only thing we're trying to do is raise money from a VC and sustain for I don't know how many years, right? Like what's really the game plan? What's your pricing model? Because we can't like really dump all the learnings we have had in traditional businesses over the last 50, 100, whatever number of years out of the door just because we are building in Web3. So those are like some very sort of unpopular opinions, but my crude realizations as I have spent time in DAOs, like, yeah.
Mari, you were laughing, so maybe you want to comment or add your input.
Yeah, I can definitely confirm that as a VC, that's a usual approach. But it's not only DAOs; it's like everything related to a lot of new tech. That we are just figuring it out, and we just focus on raising money, but not going to happen in current market. You need to have some kind of like actual business plan, like how do you make money? But that's unfortunately missing on a lot of these cases.
Stenver, do you want to continue the round around the world? What's your take on the challenges of this world and how do we solve them?
Well, I think the biggest challenges are still regulatory, but when it comes to I also think DAOs have a branding issue. Many people think that, I think vast majority of people, when they hear DAO, they think of unorganized, flat organization that tries to do something crazy. But I never approach DAOs like that. I always think DAOs are just another form of company, to be honest. So basically, to add to Ken, DAOs are basically, we have a limited liability company, we have non-profit, we also have DAO. And I think like a mix of legal body plus a DAO, maybe like inspired from Wyoming's example, is the way to go. But because like there's a lot of private DAOs out there as well, which are very organized, and or even public DAOs, which are also very organized and like function for all intents and purposes like a traditional business. They make money, they have revenues, they have costs, they have people on salary, and they hire freelancers for things that need low level of training. And so that's one comment that I have. And I think like in general, a lot, like if we just talk about random people with no organization, then we're not talking about DAOs, we're talking about DAOs, decentralized organization. But we're talking about DAOs here, decentralized autonomous organization. So what this really means is that the smarter DAOs out there, and I think the ones that are more successful, actually have a function for their token, the autonomous part, and that function drives some key economic incentives or some other type of incentives in the ecosystem. And it's very unique for every company. I can't give you one example. I think one of the best examples out there is V-curve model, where the DAO's token is basically used to vote on redistributing rewards. So in this case, the economy basically and the market decides which liquidity pools are more valuable, which ones are less, and people are actually fighting over that governance rights because they want to support their own pools. And there's lots of other good examples out there as well. It really depends on your model specifically. And honestly, you got to be very deep in the space to understand how to grade these models. You got to have good financial intuition. So yeah, I hope that one day we'll reach the point where DAO doesn't mean basically, a flat organization, but DAO means it's just an organization that makes heavy use of very smart incentive schemes through tokens, which are fully automated and have low human involvement, essentially.
Good stuff, and I hope at one point we will reach the point when Stenver, you can be a DAO again.
Yeah, me too.
Ken, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I have to agree with Stenver. It's I think it's a branding issue. We can point at the legal problems and all this stuff, but like I don't think regulations are going to change, very quickly. Like I'm calling in from Japan, and Japan's very crypto, forward leaning. But it's going to take time. They're talking about maybe making DAO, a formal legal structure that's, different than a nonprofit or, kind of an LLC or whatever you call it. But I think if you can fix the branding, problem and make it, like a legitimate thing that people are going to take seriously, that's going to move the needle a lot more than, a bunch of these other things. And it's not just the branding is not just for like external people, but if you want more smart people to, that are going to potentially quit their, very good, job at a very good tech company to come join and work for this thing, you want to have it be cool and you want to have a good brand. Like I think the branding really affects all parts of it, and also have maybe VCs think like, okay, this is interesting, this is cool, outside of folks that are already kind of investing because it's it's something that's interesting. So I think Stenver, it's a really good point, and I have to echo that.
I think at this winter probably we don't need to even convince them to quit. They will be thrown out of those great companies anyway. I wanted to comment on this branding point. I think it's probably a more shared opinion here that the organizers of this event are doing great work on branding, because internet native sounds somehow much less aggressive than DAO. Would you agree with me, Mari?
A little bit, yeah. But still, like why to like make the DAO as the why to focus on that? Because the best companies that I have seen, like in terms of the funding pipeline, they can be like blockchain or crypto or token or whatever, but that's not the main point. Like that should be a little bit like back there, because I kind of feel that a lot of these well, currently I'm mainly getting funding applications related to AI, and they are like the AI is the core focus there, but usually for no reason. Like they are only choosing AI because of the hype and wait for getting money. So that's a little bit also the thing with DAOs, that a lot of things they have chosen to be a DAO without actually thinking about what is the DAO part here. Like for instance, Decentraland is DAO, right? But they don't really like underline that anywhere. It's just Decentraland. That's the brand, and the value of the whole thing is the mainly the art.
Exactly. Making or creating the value is the key.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, for many people, if this year it's AI, last year it was metaverse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's over, thankfully. We have a few minutes to wrap up. Maybe we're roughly on time. I would like to actually thank everyone on the panel, gentlemen from around the world, and Mari for traveling from around the world to Tallinn to talk to you all. We two are here. They are there, but happy to talk with anyone more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, online people. Thank you, the stage. Thank you, everyone who has been on stage with us.